present the best practice in Portuguese museums in order to share experiences and share with the members of this consortium of Cosmos project how can develop activities, educational activities connected with the museums, and especially how to develop activities in their own museums, in their own school community museums. For this task, I made a small presentation, and I want to share several things with you. The name of this presentation is Best Practice Examples of Educational Activities in Portuguese Museums, and what we want to speak today is about how museum mediators and museum staff develop their own activities day by day. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you, Paul. Next. Okay. So in the first of this presentation, I will talk a little bit about education in Portuguese museums. Second, the best practice of educational activities, giving the example of 3 very important museums in Portugal. And third, I will present the new trends of education in museums for this next decade. So concerning the first issue, about what is the situation in Portuguese museums about education. Well, yesterday, Luís Raposo and Lola Alvarez from Portugal and Spain made wonderful presentations about the subject and how is crucial the role of education, and education has a crucial role in museums. If we go back a little bit on time, you see that educational function in the museums were bring to the core of the museums in the late 19th of 20th century. But now, passing all these years and due this new pandemic crisis that we are all of us living, the educational services are, and the educational departments are not only being seen only for schools and work for schools, but for all the community. And that's one of the questions I put here. The educational departments have programs for different types of audiences, which means that the educational departments do not communicate only for schools. That is a big error. Of course, we have different programs for different types of audiences. For instance, for individual visitors, for group visitors, or even though for schools. Of course, there is a huge connection with schools. And what I'm focusing here today is about these 2 parts. For one side, museum, please. Paul, next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, in this slide we have, on the other one, please. Okay, in this slide we have a representation of our brain. The other one, please, sorry. Okay.
This one? The one with the
pictures? Other one. No, the other. Back, go back.
No, think it talk out that sometimes it takes some small time to change the.
Okay.
The one with the puzzle of words.
Yes, this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, one of the questions I am to bring here today is people who work in the museums always talk and always think first in objects, in the objects in the museum and the importance of collections. Of course, we are formatted to think in this way. But when we talk in schools, we are talking about the teachers are the focus on students, of course, and in the curricula. So the educational departments in museums are quite important to bridging this gap, which means that we have to, for one part, the goals of museum mediators is to communicate better the collections of the museums and the objects, and by other hand, school teachers have want to understand the past, the curricula through the museum objects. So in this sense, these trends of education is how to make the collections attractable for people, and how to connect objects with the school curricula. Next slide, please. So we can see this is one of our tasks, how to bridge the gap, or bridging the gap between non-formal and formal education. One side we have non-formal education in museums, and in the other side we have formal education in schools. So of course here the key role is focused on teachers, on schools, and in museum mediators at the museums. This is how we must work to going together in one direction. Majority of times, I want to stress this about Portuguese reality. The educational services of or departments in Portuguese museums, majority of them have are professionals in education. So we have teachers in schools, and we have professionals in education in the departments, educational departments, which means that the dialogue is very easy to establish. By the other hand, we have a lot of activities that are developed not only by the museum professionals, but together with schools and together with teachers. There are regular meetings in several museums to present the educational program as well. So we have a lot of things to work together and to bridging this gap. Next slide, please. Okay, the second part of this presentation is about the real work, about the real museums. Well, for me, it was not easy to choose best practices in Portuguese museums, because in Portugal, we have a lot of museums, and we have a lot of museums with a very good educational departments. And it's one fact, Portuguese museums work very well, not only with schools, but with all types of audiences. So for this huge task, I choose 3 museums: the National Museum of Coach, the National Museum of Archaeology, and the Archaeological Museum of Carmo. What is common, next slide please, you can pass. What is common in these museums? Well, first of all, they are all centenary. There are centenary museums in Portugal. And second, all of these 3 museums have strong educational departments and do a lot of activities, not only with schools, but especially with different communities. These museums are centenary, have a lot of tourists. Majority of the visitors are tourists, not now because of the pandemic crisis, of course, but in general, majority of the visitors of these 3 museums are tourists. But even though these museums have a huge preoccupation, and they have a huge job with communities, especially with school communities. And that's why I bring here the examples of these 3 museums. Next slide. Next slide, please, Paul. Okay, thank you very much. This is the Archaeological Museum of Carmo, a very interesting place as well, but my colleagues will talk about this later. And for end this my small presentation at the beginning, before I give the floor to my colleagues, I would like to present the 2 last slides. Next slide, please. Is about the new trends in education. Well, yesterday, Luís Raposo, especially, and Lola Alvarez, shown a lot of documents and a lot of scientific articles that are being published in the last weeks, and especially a lot of things that are going on right now about the trends of the museums, in this case, the trends of education in museums. Of course, we have to focus in several things, and Luís Raposo yesterday made a very interesting reflection about this. is about the use of digital technologies, which is different to use digital technologies that we have a digital museum, as João Moro talked yesterday. So what I want to stress here, we have technological trends, and they are very well studied. For instance, self-guided visits using interactive maps. We have seen examples of that yesterday. Gamification, that João Moro talked, make a brilliant workshop about this. The use of immersive experience in museums with 360 virtual visits and so on. The use of augmented reality, virtual reality, they are two different things that we understand. And the use of 3D printing, for instance, to have replicas to allow visitors to have access to the shape of the objects. So these are the technological trends. I will not speak so much about this because João Moro talked about that yesterday and give a lot of examples. And but I want to focus more in social educational trends. Of course, museums are a mirror of the society, like schools. Museums are mirrors of society, like schools. So these museums are not the places where the old objects are. They must be creative spaces, and they must be creative space to share knowledge, because everybody who comes to the museum see and look to the objects in a different way, and different perspectives, the trends of the sustainable goals of UNESCO, multiculturalism, multi-perspective. These trends must be in the core of the museums. By other hand, what we call pop-up exhibitions or museums outside the museums. And we'll give examples of this. It's very important the museums don't be stuck inside the walls of these own museums. Museums have to go outside. And there is a lot of ways that museum go outside of his walls. We'll give examples of this. And finally, the most important thing in terms of social museology is engaging with real world problems, which means museums are spaces to discuss and to promoting things that are very important for us. For instance, social justice, multiculturalism, and sustainable development. All of these goals that we are facing nowadays in our society, all of these things that we are passing, all the world is passing for this big pandemic crisis, maybe we stopped and think a little bit about the true value of life and how museums can be this space, and with schools, the space of sharing knowledge and trying to understand better people, because people are about, our life is about people, and the objects are the reflex of the people lives. So this was my presentation, and I want now to give the floor to our Portuguese colleagues. And next slide, please. Before I give this floor, I want to have a special thank you, a big thank you for several persons. From the National Coach Museum, a big thank you to Silvana Besson, is the director of the museum. Ana Paula is the colleague of Educational Department, and the colleague Nuno Augusto who produced the video of the National Coach Museum. Here in National Museum of Archaeology, I'm here with my colleagues. Maria José Albuquerque is the coordinator of the Educational Department, Carlos Diniz, myself, and Filipa Santos, that we work here in the museum. And from Archaeological Museum, we have Rita and Constanza. And I'd like to thank you very much, these persons, because without them, we don't have these good examples to show. And they say yes from the first conversation. They produce wonderful videos, not professional videos, but wonderful videos of about their life. And I want to focus and to say one more thing. The real heroes, as I can say, the heroes in museums are the museum mediators that are every day are working with persons, real persons are working with students. And I think these activities of educational service are quite crucial in museums and to engage with society. So a big thank for all museum mediators, not only in Portugal, but around the world. And this was my presentation for now. Thank you. Now I want to pass for the National Coach Museum. They record the video, and Pau, if you don't mind, we can show the video and then invite the colleagues of the National Coach Museum to make some words about this, okay?
Hello, my name is Ana Paula and I work here in the educational service at the National Coach Museum. So, first of all, I would like to say to you that we have another museum in the old riding school that is next to the other street. And it was created by the effort of Queen Amelia, our latest queen. And it was opened in 1905. In 2015, we opened this one because we have a lack of space in the other one, and here we have the whole collection together. So, for this, we have the oldest coach of our museum, the Philip II coach, and we are going to make a trip along to 3 centuries, and we are going to have the perception of the evolutions of these vehicles till this old one until the new one that we have, that is the mail carriage. Okay. So here we have the Ocean's Coach, and it is a well done representation of the gilded work that we have told you before. As you can see, these 3 coaches that we have here were all done at the same period, but this one was restored because of that as this marvelous color of the golden leaves on the wooden surface. So here we have the coach of Mariana of Austria, and this queen came to Portugal to marry with King John V, and it was a gift for her wedding. And here, this coach is all decorated with symbols that are connected with marriage. For example, you can see some angels that are playing instruments, and above here we have, for example, the Cupido that was sending an arrow to a lion. So this is a coach that you can see that is all covered with golden leaves. That is all this called gilding, and I'm going to show to you how it is made. So the first part, the gilding workers put some kind of a glue that has a name, that is mordente, on the surface of the wood surface, and then when it's almost dry, they put golden leaves. They have a brush, and then they press the golden leaves behind the surface, the wooden surface, and then when it's all dry, they put some kind of a varnish to protect the golden leaves. And this is the work that we are going to do today in our workshop, okay? We are going to learn this process, so a kind of, because this process in a coach perhaps takes 1 month or 2 months until all the surface is covered by golden leaves, and you are going to work with false golden leaves, of course. So here you are going to have a basic overview of the gilding process, okay? So you have your mini coaches, and first of all, you are going to put with your brush this size, it is the name done to this kind of glue. You are going to put behind the surface, the size, okay? Now let it dry a little bit, and then it's ready to put the golden leaf in the whole surface. So put the golden leaf and press gently with your brush, and it will stuck in all the surface, okay? Protect the golden leaves to oxidize, seal it with the varnish. To promote cultural inclusion, the National Coach Museum has developed some guide tours for blind people. Here we have a replica of a coach that uses the same materials of the original vehicles, such as wood, velvet and leather. We have created some exhibitors, and they have revealed images, and they are written in Braille, and also have enlarged letters, and the people could see the details of each kind of vehicle that we have in our museum. Along our exhibition, we have this nucleus of different types of vehicles: a coach, a berlin, a carriage, and a sledge, from the 17th to the 19th centuries, that it is possible to touch them and understand better its scale, volume, and the diversity of the materials and textures that contributes them to understand better the collection.
Thank you very much, colleagues from the National Coach Museum. Well, they bring us a lot of experience and a lot of ideas that the great work they are doing in the National Coach Museum. And this last example is very interesting because it's focused more on persons with special need, with persons, blind people and lower vision. But I would like to invite to the floor here Ana Paula or Silvana to say something, to add, because their work is brilliant. And please, Ana Paula or Silvana, we like to hear a little bit more from you.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's Ana Paula.
Hello.
We are very pleased to work together in this project. We would like to thank Mario for the invitation, and we would like to say that we have a lot of activities that we are not showing to you today, of course, but I don't know if you want to make us any question. Please, free.
Well, I have one question. First of all, congratulations. It was a wonderful and amazing exercise. So it was very, very emotional. And the question is very easy. What kind of feedback that usually you get from the students when you do this activity?
They are very happy to bring home the little touch. Sorry.
Não, well done, no problem. Podes dizer em português que eu depois traduzo, não há problema.
No, it's not the problem. I say that they are very happy to bring home the little piece they were that are
Artwork, okay.
The coach.
The coach they bring home and they like very much, and then some friends return, others groups return because they saw the little piece at home and then want to return. Is only a way of communication and divulgation. Como é que se diz divulgation?
Dissemination.
Fantastic.
No, congratulations. And yes, I would imagine that kind of reaction. And for our partners, this is an example how you can, from your own museums in your own school, what you can do from an object of your museum. Can be a bottle, a pot, can be a photograph, something. This in this case was a cart. No, coxas. So it was very simple and with a lot of meaning for the students. So, thank you very much. It was wonderful. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Silvana and Paula. What was very, very important is testimonial. And just to stress the following points. This museum and have a lot of activities, have a very good educational program. And you can visit it in the website because it's in Portuguese and English. And if you want to learn more about this national museum, you will give you the link for the website, because there are a lot of information and a lot of didactic material and a lot of information for teachers and also for students as well. Of course, museums have to disseminate their own collection, and sometimes it's not easy. For instance, we have these brilliant examples how to communicate, coach, several types of coach that this museum have. Now we are going to another museum here in the National Museum of Archaeology. With me is Filipa Santos, my colleague in the educational department.
Hello, Filipa.
Hello.
Hello. And we want to show the video that we made. Here, of course, is a video made homemade, but we want to show you the experience here in the National Museum of Archaeology. Paul, if you don't mind, please share the video of the National Museum of Archaeology. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Filipa Santos. I'm part of the educational team of the National Museum of Archaeology. Our museum was founded in 1893 and displays one of the best collections of Egyptian antiquities in Portugal. With over 400 pieces, the collection was constituted through acquisitions when our founder, José Leite Vasconcelos, visited Egypt in 1909, and also through donations. Portugal never had an archaeological tradition in Egypt. A significant part of the collection belonged to the royal collections until 1910, when the monarchy entered in Portugal. In fact, part of the collection was offered to last Queen of Portugal, Queen Amélia, as a diplomatic gift in 1903, when the royal family visited Egypt. Through the 20th century, the collection was enriched with donations from private collectors. The exhibition is organized in 14 thematic chronological sections, covering 3,000 years of history, from prehistory to the first centuries of Christianity. As one of the most important collections of Egyptian art in Portugal, the exhibition is highly sought after by schools and other groups seeking to enrich students' curriculum plans. The museum educational team created 3 main types of activities specific for this exhibition: the guided tour dramatization, where Egyptian god or goddess appears, and the guided tour with dramatization and workshop. The guided tour seeks to explore the collection, favoring the students' participation. Topics such as geography, architecture, religion, daily life, writing, and mummification are some of the themes we approach, always using pieces from the collection. For example, when we explain the ancient Egyptian writing, the hieroglyphs, we read a cartouche, this oval shape with a line at the end indicating that the text encloses a royal name, in the case, one of the many names and titles from Ramses II. After, we translate and explain the meaning of the hieroglyphs used. One of the most popular visits is the guided tour with dramatization and workshop. Here, we display a very important sarcophagus with a representation of one of the most important moments of Egyptian religiosity, psychostasis, that is the trial of Osiris. The moment when the gods decide the fate of the deceased soul. We used the religious scene depicted in the sarcophagus to create a character, the god Anubis, who, when identified, appears to the students. When he appears, he presents himself and explains his role on the trial of Osiris. Besides the sarcophagus, the collection displays a mummy, which allows us to explain the process of human mummification and some of the objects associated with it, such as the canopic jars. The museum also displays some animal mummies, such as crocodiles and fauna. After the guided tour in the Egyptian galleries, the activity continues in another room of the museum where we carry out our workshops. In the second part of the guided tour, we offer our students a workshop. The idea is to decorate a piece inspired on our Egyptian collection. In the case, a canopic jar related to the mummification, one of the themes approached before in the Egyptian gallery. The piece was previously created by the educational team. The model is inspired on the jar that represents the ancient Egyptian deity, Kebe Senwef, one of the 4 sons of Horus in Egyptian mythology. During the mummification process, the canopic jar was used to contain intestines. The lid of a jar is a falcon head. To do it, we used recycled materials, like these paper cups, which were painted with white paint and then coated with a plaster. The lid was modeled in clay, from which we made a silicone mold, this one here. After this, we have the plaster model, which we can decorate and paint. The final result is something like this, with the cup and the lid. Our challenge for the students is to decorate them. The main goal of the guided tour with dramatization and workshop is not only to offer to our students who visit us knowledge about this ancient, fascinating civilization, but also to give an unforgettable experience inside the museum. After all, we want them to enjoy visiting museums.
Hello, my name is Mario Antas and I work in the National Museum of Archaeology. I'm here today to present you the pedagogical suitcase. This instrument was developed to bring the museum to the schools. We know that sometimes schools cannot come to the museum because schools are very far away from the museum, or then they don't have time enough, or even though the pandemic times that bring us a new normality. So thinking about all these situations, here in the National Museum of Archaeology, we present this pedagogical tool. As you can see, is a suitcase, and in the suitcase we have several objects since several different periods of time. For instance, we start in prehistoric times, in Paleolithic, and from Paleolithic we have these objects. One of the main tasks of this suitcase is to tell stories. We use storytelling. The important thing that museum mediators can go to the schools and to explain the objects of the museum, or the teachers can use it in their own classrooms. For instance, we have here the hand axe, and this is a prehistoric tool from Paleolithic period. It was used by the gather-hunter communities, and with this instrument we can understand the way they have living. For instance, this was the instrument to kill the animals and to remove the skin and to cut the meat. From the Upper Paleolithic, we have this instrument is a point of arrow, and this point of arrow is, this shape was based in this laurel leaf, and they were used by the gather-hunters communities also to kill small animals. From the Neolithic period, we also have another hand axe. This hand axe was used to cut small trees, and it was used by the first communities of farmers. After Neolithic, we enter in Metal Age. With the Metal Age, a new order appears, the order of chief warriors. We have a representation of the chief warrior, and with several elements, like this one is a necklace we call turquoise, and this bracelet on the arms, and also this shield, and also the dagger. All of these symbols represent the power. Another important object that we bring in this pedagogical suitcase, it was this statue, the bronze statue
of fortune goddess. It was a Roman goddess that represents the plenty. Another important object, it was the oil lamp. The oil lamp, it was important in the Roman period because it turned the night into day. It is the portable light that the Romans can take it and with them for all the places. As you can see in the museum, we have a lot of these objects to represent this way of the Roman period. The Roman era brings a new world, a world with a lot of roads connecting all the parts of empire. The language, Latin, that connected all the people, the bridges around all the empire, and also the coins. The coins were a way to traders make the commerce around the whole empire in Europe, North Africa, and Eastern Asia. In this Roman mosaic, we have a representation of Bacchus, the god of wine, pushed by a chariot of tigers. Well, of course, in this case, it's not possible to bring the mosaic into the pedagogical suitcase. But for us, the pedagogical suitcase is a very important tool to bring a little bit of the museum to the schools, and in this case, to allow all the students to have a little bit of history in their own classroom. Well, and this was the travel to our magical suitcase, our pedagogical suitcase. We can bring the museum, a little bit of the museum, into the schools inside this suitcase. And for us, it's a very important tool, a tool that allows us to come to the schools, to come to other places and show a little bit of our culture, our past, and especially allow us to engage with the objects, with the replicas. We have replicas of the objects on this suitcase, and in this sense, all the people can understand the importance of the objects and also the shapes and the colors of the objects. So with these instruments, we have a very important tool to understand better our past and our memory and ourselves.
Well, it was the contributor of the National Museum of Archaeology. Now I give the floor to Felipe, or if anyone else wants to comment or make some questions.
So we show you today our blockbuster tour, guided tour inside the museum. The Egyptian is very, very popular between schools. We have teachers that visit us for about 20 years or more sometimes. Each year they bring us the students, and normally they ask for the dramatization, because the dramatization, well, not only is very popular, but it creates in the students a very important memory about the museum. It turns the guided tour more plausible for them and unforgettable. And well, sometimes we have, for example, students that come several times because, well, they repeat and so on. And one of the things they remember from the last year is a dramatization. So it's a very impacting experience for them, and we think it's very positive. I don't know if you have any question.
I have a quick question, if anyone else have other. Regarding the suitcase for the schools, to design the contents for this suitcase, did you had to review the curricula of the schools in order to make connections with the studies that they regularly are doing, or do you focus directly on different periods that you know they are studying, or is there any interaction with the formal curricula of the schools and you?
Yes, thank you for the question, Paul. Well, our pedagogical suitcase, it's a very open didactical instrument because we can use it in several ways. For instance, one, we can connect it with school curricula, and special teachers from history request our pedagogical suitcase to rent it and to use in their own classrooms. So this pedagogical suitcase can be used by teachers in real situation in classrooms, or can be used by museum mediators that go to the schools. Yes, it's connected with the school curricula, especially in discipline of history, but we can also, because we have in that magical box, in that magical suitcase, replicas of objects from Paleolithic times until medieval ages. So the way that each teacher use the pedagogical suitcase is free. For instance, we have teachers using this pedagogical suitcase in the discipline of art. So it's not only focused in the discipline, several approaches in several ways.
Okay, thank you.
And now, if I may, I want to pass for the final example of Portugal. The Archaeological Museum of Carmo is also a centenary museum. Yes?
Sorry, just before pass to the next practice, just to congratulate you also for this amazing example. The multisensorial suitcase was that it's an experience that I use often in my school, that kind of suitcase, especially that suitcase. So our partners, what can this example for our community school museums, it's very important because brings you the multisensorial perspective. So if you have your community school museum in your library, in your corridors, in some class, you can build a suitcase like this one. So you can take, for example, the suitcase of these multisensorial objects that tell some narrative, some story to the class, because sometimes kids can't go to the class. So it's a way to, you can take them also to the library where is the museum, or to the place where is the museum, but also can give you the opportunity to move your museum through a suitcase to a class, or even to outdoors, to the community and so on. So this example, it's one very important example. For instance, in Portugal, our community school museums, in our space for Europe, we will have a multisensorial example in the suitcase. So we have a suitcase for each partner of our consortium. So we have Spain, Italy, Greece, Rome, Poland, and inside of this suitcase you will find objects in some way related to the identity of those countries. So this is just an example. So Mario, Felipe, Jose, congratulations also.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for your words, your kind words. But we have also another example of a pedagogical suitcase from Carmo Museum. And for all our partners on Cosmos, I just want to say I will try to make this comment on the end, but these pedagogical suitcases are very efficient in the work with schools, and you can develop your own, as Miguel said, but also you are seeing here examples, good practice examples of pedagogical suitcases that are being used by the museums for several years or several times. So it really works. They are being tested by real museum mediators, by real teachers, and in real schools like Miguel's schools and other schools. And we have a lot of videos of that I can share also in Cosmos platforms to show the engagement that we do with students, and how we see their own eyes shining and seeing the replica of the objects, and to touch and to feel and to engage with the objects. And to see, wow, it's like this that the objects are. So I think we turn with this portable museum a way to engage with students, and especially to feel history. They feel inside the history, and they feel inside the real things. And this is the most important: engage, engage, engage. So now I want to pass, if Paul don't mind, to the final example of Portugal, Carmo Archaeological Museum, with our colleagues that will present their own experience. Thank you.
Hi there, greetings from Lisbon. The Carmo Archaeological Museum is installed in the ruins of the ancient Church of Carmo since the late 19th century. The church lost its roof and part of its structures during the earthquake of 1755, and the museum is installed there since 1864 in the heart of Lisbon. And our collection has objects from the prehistorical times until the 18th century. This is one of the rooms of the museum. This room, the objects inside are from the prehistorical times. It's what we call in the museum the room number 1. And all the rooms of the museum are installed in the old chapels of the church. This part of the church survived the earthquake of 1755, and you can see the roof is still the original one from the construction of the church. Inside this room, which is dedicated to the prehistorical collection of the museum, we can see in the center of the room a model of the fortification that was built 5,000 years ago by a community of prehistoricals, sedentaries that choose this place to live. Nowadays, it's situated in a small villa north of Lisbon called Vila Nova de São Pedro. As you can see, the fortification had more than the central wall where the community lived and where the fire of the community would probably exist, and also other walls. On the vitrines of the room, you can see the artifacts that were found in the excavations that took place during the 1930, 40 and 50 of the 20th century, and they were coordinated by a member of the Association of Archaeologists, which run the museum today, and his name was Afonso do Passo. He was in charge of the excavation. He went to the villa and he made a connection with the community there and organized the excavations with the community. These pictures we have show exactly how Afonso do Passo used to work, gathering all the communities, all the people from the community to work with him in the excavation.
This is one of the activities that we have in the educational department, and it is aimed to school groups from the ages of 6 to 12 and 12 to 15. This activity happens either here in the museum with the school groups, or we go to them in the schools with our big trunk full of artifacts, full of copies of the artifacts from Vila Nova de São Pedro in the video that you saw before. And because in archaeology context is everything, we also decided so that the students could have an idea how the place was when it was habited 5,000 years ago. We made the option in the educational tools to also have a model that has one of the possible reconstructions of how that community lived. You can see in the model that this is a sedentary community. They have animals, the small huts where they live. This is a way that students can have an idea of the context, that the artifacts found in excavation sometimes do not give that context to the students. Either in the museum or in the schools, what we aim to do with these replicas, and these are replicas from the real artifacts that we have in room number 1, the idea is that students can handle these replicas and imagining and feeling what the form is, trying to recreate what the function of the object was in the original, and also the materials and how it was made. We have these replicas are divided. In this upper platform, we have the objects related to feeding. And one of the things that happens in one of our activities, this object that the replica was made whole broke during an activity. And that enabled us to work with the students that archaeologists do not find objects most of the time complete. And this is like understanding that you may only found this part, and then you need to realize that the object together, it will be more or less like this. In here we have the objects related to hunting. These are arrowheads. And the idea, once again, is that students holding these objects can for themselves realize what their use was and how they were made and the materials that they were made of. In this last part, we have objects related. This was a sedentary community and the way they did objects for themselves. This is using the bone of an animal to make a needle. And this is a necklace. And these are some of the organic materials that we know that existed. This also helps to envision the students what kind of food this community would have at their disposals. Once again, our aim with this activity is to let students touch, handle the objects so that they can understand how they were made and for what purpose they were made. Just one of the tools that we used in the educational department to work the collection with our students and the school groups. We've been doing it for quite a while, and the feedback from the teachers and the students has been very good, either here in the museum or when we go to the schools. If you do have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us, and hope this was helpful for you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Rita and Constanza by this wonderful job they develop in pedagogical department of Carmo Museum, and well, a lot of material, another pedagogical suitcase with a lot of examples of instruments, objects, and also with food. So I'll invite Rita to talk. Or Constanza, I don't know. Welcome and thank you very much for sharing.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I would like to thank Mario for the invitation to be here today. And just to let you know, because if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer them. But just to let you know that just yesterday, me and Constanza went to a school in Lisbon with we call it a trunk because it's a very big trunk. It's not a suitcase, it's a trunk. So even yesterday, in the middle of the pandemic, with everything going on, we were invited to go to a school. The students were, I think, on the 7th grade in the Portuguese educational system. I think it's like 13, 14 years old. And we were invited by the history teacher to go there with this and have a live kind of experience with the students and talk about the archaeology, and also, of course, because it's related to their curricula, talk about the different communities and prehistorical communities and what really evolved. And with our collection and with the trunk, it's easy to go outside of the museum and go to contact directly with the students and the schools. So once again, thank you very much, and we're here for any questions you have.
I don't know if there are any questions for our colleagues.
I have a comment to do, but I want to be the last one. If any colleague, partner has any question, please. Omar, very quickly. So once more, a trunk in this case, wonderful trunk. But full of content, full of history, and amazing also. So what can we learn with this? Well, what can I learn with this? You can make several approaches, not only in the history. Was a history teacher that invited you to go to their schools, but we had also in the past some experience like this ones. Mario also went to my school a few days ago, and Pedro could also make an archaeology experience. I don't know if if Mario has the videos there, but we can share it in the platform in the future also. But we can have several approaches, not only history, but geography also, arts, also minerals, food from that time, technology, the evolution of the technology. So we can approach different in a multidisciplinary subjects. So that's the multisensorial, and this kind of suitcase or trunk. It's very useful for this kind of a perspective in the multi-dimensions. So Rita and Constanza, also congratulations for your work.
Thank you, Miguel. I think we are finishing the Portuguese best practice examples in pedagogical activities. Just 3 final words. First one is to say and to stress the idea that all these examples of good practice represent museums in Portugal, and all of these museums are open in pandemic crisis. It's very hard for us as museum mediators without public develop our activities, but we are reinventing ourselves. We are going to the schools every day, and when school needs us, we are going there. Is how we see, for instance, you saw in the National Museum of Coach an activity, guided visits by Ana Paula last week. And we saw examples in the National Museum of Archaeology and also in the Archaeological Museum of Carmel. So museums are open and are engaging with schools, engaging with teachers, and allow us to make these dialogues. It was the first idea. The second idea is museums develop a lot of strategies to communicate with schools and a lot of pedagogical materials. You can, in these Portuguese examples, we saw several types of materials that are being used by the museums, and they really work in the educational activities. And the third word I want to say to you and to share with you is the follows. For the colleagues that are working and creating community school museums, it is very important to get inspired with these experiences and develop their own activities and their own wallets, whatever, pedagogical materials to use it. Because we have a lot of ideas, and to see what real works in the real world. And I think it's a very important thing. For closing this session of Portuguese best experience and best practice, once more, a big thank to all the colleagues, museum mediators from the National Coach Museum, National Museum of Archaeology, and Archaeological Museum of Carmel. By their wonderful work, they record the videos in record time from one week to the other. And well, you are brilliant. And for me, I'm very proud to have this opportunity to work with you and to share your wonderful work among our European colleagues. So thank you very much.